This is the lecture for Principles of Management, Unit 13. This is a re-record. I'm Professor Marsh. We have three chapter objectives in this short but important chapter. It's Unit 13. It's Chapter 13 in both editions of our textbook. And the Unit 13 is all about every type of communication, communicating effectively, how technology affects managerial communication and contemporary issues in communication. It begins by attempting to debunk the myth that managers should try to stifle the grapevine, and actually you never can. You can only push it underground so you don't hear what's going on. Good leaders encourage some favorite subordinates to keep them up to date on the grapevine, and that's a huge part of the whole premise behind Undercover Boss, the idea that you can find out what people are really saying. And the book correctly says that the grapevine is as natural to an organization as water is to an ocean, and that's the truth. As a manager, you cannot make decisions without information. The information that is communicated to you, and as a manager, you have to communicate to your coworkers and employees in order to plan, organize, lead, and control. So communication is crucial, and managers have to know the tools and techniques of communication. So communicating effectively, that's our first objective, and that's communication is the transfer of understanding and meaning from one person to another. And your book actually has a pretty good diagram. If you look at Exhibit 13-1, you see the 7 parts of the communication process. So you have the communication source or sender, encoding, the message itself, the channel, decoding, the receiver, and feedback. And that's the loop, that's the process. The book also notes differences between written and verbal communication. We know that written communication, particularly instructions, are more accountable than people trying to remember what they heard. We know from psychology that people remember what they read, typically at a very higher percentage than what they hear. And so if you are communicating instructions or feedback to your employees and you want it understood in writing, is typically preferable in terms of understanding and also accountability. Then the book discusses the grapevine, and I think that's an important part of all organizations, just to kind of understand what people are talking about. And that's part of the culture of an organization. And so you want the grapevine to be positive whenever possible, and to encourage that in your activity as a manager to create a positive culture and a helpful culture as far as accomplishing the organization's goals. Also, there's body language. Body language is very important to communication. It's not just what's said, it's how it's said, and particularly if it's person-to-person communications, the body language that accompanies that communication. Intonation. As a public speaker, I try to be aware of that. Oftentimes people will emphasize those words which are most important and just kind of breeze through the stuff that's just the rote, polite chit-chat. Barriers to effective communication. So we have to be aware of those, and then also overcoming barriers. And I think the book does a good job of describing this as well. So what do we mean by some of the process issues? So encoding, that's converting a message into symbolic form. The message, that's a purpose for communicating that's to be conveyed. Channel is the medium by which the message travels, and translating a received message, that's decoding. And then feedback is checking to see how successfully a message has been transferred. Now, with respect to body language, I think that's a learned skill. It takes time and experience to learn. But nonverbal communication is important. Certainly to me as an attorney, I have to negotiate, and nonverbal communication can be an important key. Dealing with most people, their body language matches their verbal communication. But sometimes there are unspoken keys to dishonesty or other incongruous warning signs. In dealing with narcissists and other difficult people, antisocial types, I've noticed that you can get what I call the smirk, though. You know, when the dishonest guy smiles falsely when they're cheating and they think they're getting away with it. That's a trigger to me to shut down negotiations, at least for a while, and to perform some additional due diligence as far as what's really going on. Be careful about cross-cultural differences. Sometimes a smile isn't a smile. Sometimes it communicates happiness, which is how we typically understand it, but sometimes it communicates confusion, misunderstanding, or perhaps embarrassment in other cultures. And in dealing with employees or with negotiating partners from other cultures, it's often very important nowadays to avoid embarrassing the other side. It can keep you from being able to accomplish your goals, whether it's to make a deal or to get good performance out of your coworkers. Also regarding body language, note the concept of NLP, which is using nonverbal and verbal cues to try to manipulate others. It can be helpful and used ethically to create trust, empathy, and to ensure understanding, but it can also be used to manipulate or mislead, sort of like the unethical hypnosis techniques that sometimes people read about and try to practice. If I notice that someone is mirroring me, if they're leaning the same way, talking the same way, maybe they don't have the same accent that I have and they try to imitate my language, I will sometimes shut down and step back as much as if I see the smirk. The smirk is different, however, than the sneer. That's a different form of nonverbal communication. The sneer, and I'm not very good at it, I think sometimes you have to go to the Ivy League to really perfect the sneer. There's actually a passage of that in a Dave Barry novel called Big Trouble about how Princeton must have a course in sneering. He was talking about his editor at the Miami newspaper. The sneer is dismissive and a put down, and it means that the other guy just thinks he's put one over on you, or rather, it's a put down. It's the other guy thinks he's smarter than you. The smirk means the other guy thinks that he's put one over on you. So just be aware of the differences on that as you perfect your ability to read nonverbal cues. Also note the importance of formal gestures. Formal gestures can have an important effect on coworkers and also on customers. Handshakes, bowing, other greetings can convey respect, authority, or simply good customer service. The Ritz-Carlton tradition of always responding to a thank you with "it's my pleasure," and also making sure that every time they serve you that the lion's head logo is facing you when you're served, and other companies, and we've talked about this before, certainly Chick-fil-A and some of the others have that same practice of saying "it's my pleasure" as the automatic response to a thank you from a customer. Techniques to improve communication. So how do we improve our communication skills? Using feedback, confirming understanding, simplified but not condescending language, trying to encode it in a way that is more direct and perhaps cuts through all the jargon. Using word pictures and parables, certainly this is something that you can learn from some of the stories in the Bible as far as how communication was enhanced by creating a story that illustrates the message. Active listening, especially when combined with confirming understanding. Actually listening to the other person and trying to confirm back to them what they said, as opposed to saying your next line, thinking about what you're going to say next. There was a scene about that in Pulp Fiction, in which John Travolta said that he probably waits to see what he's going to say next, but he's trying to listen better. So even hitmen in the movies are trying to improve their communication skills. So don't just recite lines. You want to be in the moment. The skill of effective listening is really done well by people who are improvisational comedians. So somebody, like Robin Williams or Tina Fey, are really good at, listening and responding in a way because they want to be able to riff on what the other person says. So it makes everything a little funnier. So anyhow, that's something about communicating effectively. Now, how does technology affect managerial communication? So the book gives us three examples: networked communication, wireless communication, and technology and the manager's job. So networked communication, this is creating integrated organizational networks and allowing communication in real time throughout the organization. This can be very important when you have organizations that are global or at least are situated in different locations, and you can't just get everybody together for the company picnic and talk about things or have actual in-face meetings. So networked communication, very, very important to far-flung organizations, and perhaps very important to your final essay. So keep that in mind. Wireless communication, mobile communication, just Wi-Fi on our computers and cell phones, allowing us to communicate without actually being there in person. That's how we survived COVID and the shutdowns because of COVID. And kept business going when nobody was going to the office because they were afraid of the virus. Technology and the manager's job. So over 83% of managers use technology to communicate with employees. Over 83%. So it's almost universal, but there are some holdouts. And employees can read instead of remember instructions. That's important for technology too. Email is forever. Texts, can always be recovered from a server. So feedback and follow-up are enhanced. Accountability is enhanced, and flexibility is enhanced too. If you find a problem, you can correct it if you can communicate with everybody at the same time and say, "Wait, stop, hold on, we have to change things." And so, particularly for organizations that are competing, you can, if you're making a mistake and you're charging off in the wrong direction, you possibly could correct that. So maybe if Bernard Montgomery with Operation Market Garden had better communication, he would have known that he was getting stretched too thin. Today's communication issues. So there are several. How to manage communication in an internet world. Just understand that email is forever. If you commit something to an email, you're going to have to work very. You don't want other people to read sometime in the future. You're going to have to work very hard to get it erased because your server is going to have it. The other guy's server is going to have it, and probably some intermediary communications people from telephone, computer server, internet server, and other companies will have that someplace in their system and recoverable if somebody wants to recover it. If they don't want to recover it, then maybe you can bash up a few dozen electronic devices and have it just disappear, all 33,000 of them. Legal and security issues. Watch out for sexual harassment, stupid internet jokes, and defamation. Your book gives you the example of Whole Foods, which is typically considered to be a very ethical organization, but apparently they had some problems with employees who were posting defamatory information about a competitor, and that led to some legal action and some pain for their organization. Personal interaction, using social media tools and techniques to leverage employee interaction, and again, that could be an important topic for all of you soon. Employees and social media, be careful, watch out, limit, control, and monitor employees' use of social media to avoid those legal and security issues, and also interaction, harassment, making stupid jokes, forwarding stupid jokes, those sorts of things. Lots of people have gotten in trouble for that because the internet and the devices that you use on the job legally belong to the employer, not to the employee. Typically, the server in the system, the business supplied telephones are typically accessible to your employers, and so you should be using those for business and not for personal purposes. And quite frankly, in an ethical sense, if there's something that you're embarrassed to do personally, why would you do it even with your own devices? Just keep that in mind. Knowledge management, an important issue for business today is just the fast pace of improvements in technology, improvements in our knowledge, and getting that out to everyone. And if you can create a learning culture with your employees, encouraged to share ideas for improvement throughout the organization, and to also for perhaps people in management to share ideas that possibly could be tried out to improve the organization, you're going to perhaps stay ahead of your competitors, or at least stay up with those that you're trying to benchmark against. But just watch out for information overload. You can get too much information, and it could certainly hamstring and perhaps retard the ability of the organization to move, as everyone's trying to try new things and do new things and not focused on the overall goal. Certainly, the example in your book of Wrigley, the Wrigley Corporation, did it well as far as knowledge management. Communication and customer service, you have the Metro Bank and the Ritz-Carlton examples in your book, using the communication skills that are and techniques that are taught through the organization to communicate both good customer service and also the reputation for good customer service with Ritz-Carlton and Metro Bank, the handshakes and it's my pleasure. And then ethical communications. As you communicate to your employees, don't hide the ball. Include all information. Make sure the information is true in every sense, not deceptive in any way, and also to be civil. Don't violate standards of behavior, respect, or courtesy. Managers need to encourage, monitor, discipline, and control these aspects of communication, and also to set a good example. So that's our unit on communication. and we've got one more in the chapter, which I will be reposting soon. I also have posted some information that you'll need for your final exam, and this unit is an important unit in terms of some of the leadership and communication issues for that project. So please stay up with everything, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.